Daniel Crawford stared at the letter in his trembling hands, the elegant script dancing before his eyes in the dim light of his cluttered apartment. An invitation from a mysterious benefactor offering him access to a trove of rare manuscripts, documents that could not only solidify his reputation as a historian, but potentially redefine his entire field. Ever since his dismissal from the university, his peers doubted his theories, mocking his obsession with the occult influences on early literature. The bitter taste of humiliation still lingered every time he recalled the sneers and whispered conversations that fell silent when he entered a room. This was his chance at redemption, a way to prove them all wrong and reclaim his standing in the academic community. Yet, beneath his excitement lurked a gnawing apprehension. The letter bore no name, only an ornate seal depicting a serpent devouring its own tail, an ancient symbol of infinity and self-destruction. He wondered who could have known about his research, who had gone to such lengths to reach out to him. But the lure was too great to resist. The old mansion loomed ahead, shrouded in mist that clung to the overgrown hedges like ghostly fingers. Daniel's boots crunched on the gravel path as he approached the heavy oak doors, which groaned open as if expecting him. The air inside was stale, tinged with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic, like aged blood. Faded tapestries lined the walls, depicting scenes of battles long forgotten and triumphs of nameless kings. The dim light from tarnished chandeliers cast long shadows that seemed to twist and writhe at the edges of his vision. He felt a chill run down his spine, but dismissed it as the draft seeping through the cracked windows. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors watched him with eyes that seemed almost alive, tracking his movements. Determined, he made his way to the library as instructed, the promise of scholarly treasures driving him forward. He couldn't shake the feeling that the house was not just old, but aware. The library was a labyrinth of towering bookcases, each shelf bowing under the weight of ancient tomes. Dust motes swirled in the air, disturbed by his presence, dancing in the beams of light that sliced through the gaps in the curtains. As he ran his fingers along the spines, he noticed a peculiar set of volumes bound in dark, mottled leather, uneven and coarse to the touch, unlike anything he'd ever seen. The leather seemed to pulse subtly under his fingertips, warm and almost alive. Intrigued, he pulled one from the shelf. The cover was devoid of any title or markings, but the pages inside were filled with intricate symbols, archaic scripts, and illustrations that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. A sudden dizziness washed over him, and he gripped the edge of a table to steady himself. His eyes were drawn to a depiction of a figure standing before a door, identical to the entrance of the mansion. A sense of déjà vu enveloped him, a feeling that he had seen this image before, perhaps in a dream or a nightmare long forgotten. Unable to resist, Daniel delved deeper into the codices, the hours slipping away unnoticed. The images grew more disturbing, rituals involving shadowy figures cloaked in darkness, grotesque transformations where humans melded with beasts, and landscapes that defied the laws of nature with twisted trees and skies ablaze with impossible colors. As he studied an illustration of a man whose face was a swirl of darkness, he felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. A whisper echoed through the room, too faint to discern, but unmistakably real. He spun around, but the library was empty, save for the silence that pressed against his ears. The shadows seemed longer now, stretching toward him like grasping hands. His heartbeat quickened, and he chided himself for letting old houses and creepy books get to him. After all, he was a man of science, a seeker of truth, not one to be swayed by childish fears. But a small voice in the back of his mind questioned whether there was more to this place than mere superstition. That night, sleep eluded him. Restless, he tossed and turned in the grand four-poster bed provided for him, its canopy casting unsettling shadows across the ceiling. His dreams, when they finally came, were feverish visions of endless corridors lined with doors that led nowhere, or worse, back to the same place. He heard whispers calling his name, beckoning him to open just one more door. He awoke in a cold sweat, the silence of the mansion pressing in on him like a tangible weight. The boundaries between reality and dream blurred as whispers became voices, and fleeting shadows solidified into figures at the edge of his vision, disappearing when he turned to look. Desperate for clarity, he returned to the library, convinced that the answers lay within the cryptic texts. But the more he read, the less sense it all made. The symbols rearranged themselves on the pages, forming patterns that seared into his mind like brands. His reflection in the window showed eyes not his own, dark, hollow, and depthless, filled with an ancient hunger. In the midst of his turmoil, Daniel stumbled upon a hidden passage behind one of the bookcases. The mechanism clicked softly as he pulled a particular book, causing the shelf to swing inward. Compelled by a force beyond comprehension, he descended a spiral staircase that seemed to stretch into the depths of the earth. The walls were damp, covered with unfamiliar markings that glowed faintly. The air grew thick, carrying the scent of decay and something acidic that burned his nostrils. An oppressive darkness swallowed the faint glow of his lantern, which flickered as if struggling against an unseen wind. At the bottom, he entered a cavernous chamber where a massive stone altar stood at its center, inscribed with the same serpent symbol from the letter. Surrounding it were figures cloaked in tattered robes, their faces obscured by hoods, their chants rising and falling in a disturbing cadence. The language was ancient, resonating within his very bones, as if awakening something dormant. Terror rooted him to the spot as they turned toward him in unison, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light that pierced through the darkness. The leader extended a skeletal hand, beckoning him to join them. The bony fingers curled like talons. As they closed in, Daniel's terror transformed into a strange acceptance. Memories long buried surged to the surface. Fragments of rituals performed under blood-red moons, vows whispered in forgotten tongues, sacrifices made in the name of knowledge. This was not his first time here. He was not an unwitting visitor but a returning acolyte who had sought forbidden knowledge and paid the ultimate price. The codices were his own creation, a vessel to unlock the doors between worlds, to transcend the limitations of mortal understanding. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. He had been trapped in a cyclical purgatory of his own making, bound to the mansion and its secrets for eternity. With a hollow laugh that echoed in the cavernous space, he stepped forward, embracing his fate as the figures closed around him. The chamber and its occupants dissolved into darkness, and for a moment there was nothing but silence. Then, far above, the mansion stood silent once more, waiting for the next seeker drawn by the lure of hidden truths. Somewhere, a letter was being penned, sealed with a serpent devouring its own tail, beginning the cycle anew, forever repeating the same haunting refrain.